The DCU has finally begun, for the most part. Yes, the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos have dropped. Although we are technically in the DCU, I feel it won't actually set in until we get that first live action movie being Superman next July, but we are here. Upon my 2 a.m. viewing, I've got to say, it was pretty damn solid. I had a good time just like I felt I would, and I feel that it would only ramp up from here. We have less than 2 hours left of this show, right? 5 more episodes, but there are a couple of Easter eggs to discuss, predictions to be made, and of course, we cannot have any new comic book anything without the most perennial aspect in any of all fandoms, bitching. So we will also get into some of the controversies that have been arising with the show. So let's make like Rick Flag Sr. and get into the plot. So for episode 1, the Collywobbles, great first name by the way, basically a bad feeling in your gut about something. It's quite simple. Cersei is leading a group of men called the Sons of Themyscira into the Eastern European nation of Polkistan with the promise that once they help her take it over, she will lead them into Themyscira. They were a thing in the comics briefly in the New 52 Wonder Woman. They were like the product of Amazonians getting pregnant by sailors, and when they did not have girls, they would exile the boys. They seem to be taking on a more fragile militia type vibe with the acronym SOFT. EQ is so important. But basically, Waller needs Rick Flag Sr. to take the Creature Commandos to this nation and protect the princess, thus protecting the deal Polkistan and America are mulling over for oil. And I really like the political dialogue and commentary here, because shit, we really are just fighting over oil in this bitch. And we get some good exposition laced within the conversation that feels natural, packed with world building. I mean, we see Cersei has been arrested in Metropolis, so people are speculating that the first image we ever saw of Superman was of Cersei, and I believe Guy Gardner fighting in the background. So more and more of this world feels lived in. Also, people, mostly Snyder cultists, were throwing a tantrum about this supposed Amazon's design because of it being skimpy, and Zack's Justice League Amazonians were catching flack for that reason, which the commentator said that Themyscira perhaps exists. So I'm not sure if these are real Amazonians or if it's like one of those recreation photos. But first off, I never really paid too much attention to the Amazonians' fits. There is a noticeable difference between the Justice League and the Wonder Woman movie and cloth being used by the Amazonians. But in my opinion, it's just that Zack Snyder has a fascination with bodybuilding, which is dope as fuck, and he wanted to show these women's physiques who are more than likely bodybuilders. Personally, this was never an issue for me. It seems like it would be exhausting to over-exaggerate the severity of these things before we actually know the extent of it, because again, who knows if these are actually even Amazonians or what this is, but oh well. We get brief descriptions on the team and head over to Polkistan where they meet the princess and the fun begins. Well, maybe not just yet, but we get more of Flag's backstory with his wife and how he had Rick Flag Jr. when he was only 18, and we see with the framing the emotion in Rick Flag and when he was describing to Ilana what had happened to his son. So just more seeds to be planted for when he shows up in Peacemaker 2 to add extra to what he's gonna be doing, because he's seeking revenge. You killed my son, motherfucker, I'm gonna whoop your ass. It has been confirmed that Rick Flag Sr. is actually a legendary Super Sigma, as he showed pure restraint and maybe just a little bit of fear when fine shit Princess Ilana was busting it out and throwing that shit on him, and he resisted. I like the leaky faucet innuendo there, as he chose to doom scroll instead. This is when the bride sneaks out and Nina follows on her way to Castle Frankenstein, and that is when we get Phosphorus trying to swipe the kill switch from Flag, and then we get their fight, which was absolutely dope. First off, the animation and art style absolutely go hard from all angles. Like the character design, the colors are so vibrant and almost incandescent. Like there's such a glow about everything, like the highlights, and the backdrops are just like stunning. The animation itself is done by Bobby Pills, the guys who did the Invincible teasers that look noticeably better than the show, and it was great, super dynamic. You felt the impact with each hit or dash or charge up. The choreography and camera movement was stellar as well. The episode ending with Frankenstein being informed that the bride is at the castle, setting him on his path to meet up with everyone. The first episode, it was truthfully a lot of setup, seed planting, and exposition, but the way in which they did all that was smooth and even a bit clever, I'd say. It seems that there are some twists to expect coming up soon, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but even though I can see a couple, I feel there might be even more that I can't see, which very much excites me. The episode is nothing groundbreaking, but it's very solid, so I have to give it a fluctuating 7 to 7.5 out of 10. Moving on to episode 2, the Tourmaline Necklace, another great name. The episode belongs to the bride. And backshots. Well, confirmed front shots, but assumed back shots, okay? I mean, look at this face right here. It says it all. But we see the bride's backstory and we get a sense of how the season will be treated in terms of each episode is more than likely going to be used to provide that backstory for the characters while simultaneously pushing the plot forward, whatever it morphs into, right? Again, I think Gunn is setting up a couple different twists here, but upon entering Frankenstein Castle, we see a myriad of flashbacks of how and why the bride was created, solely because Frankenstein wanted a bride, wanted to experience love, which is extremely understandable and human, that desire for connection. The only thing is, the other person has to feel that way towards you too, and especially being animated for that sole purpose and what that does to a person, like that's gotta be crazy. And Frankenstein finds out quick when she gets a good up close look at that mug and probably a whiff and starts freaking out. And we see how she came to be with Dr. Frankenstein essentially raising her as his daughter, gifting her the precious tourmaline necklace that she's now looking for, and how that drove Frankenstein insane. And the fact he was getting impatient that she was still so fearful of him and not loving him led to him killing the doctor, their creator. Well, them banging was probably most of it, but this is the precipice of their centuries-long relationship and dynamic of Frankenstein being a hyper incel super simp chasing after her and her fighting him off in different eras. Like, bro, if fine shit don't like you back, you gotta stop, okay? But this was all intertwined with a big fight between the bride, the sons of Themyscira, and Circe, which absolutely just went off again. The choreography, the visuals, the way that they animated Circe's costume, like everything was so damn good. The use of magic, you felt the impact of each hit, and the camera movement, again, so dynamic. Almost the same level of quality as in the first episode, except there's more ground covered here, and the pace of going back and forth in time was very smooth. The bride and Nina end up being thrashed by the end, and looks like it's up to the rest of the commandos and Frankenstein coming through for the rescue. So a pretty nice improvement from the first episode. It really kind of sets up the flow for the next 5 episodes in that we know each episode is going to give us a backstory for each one of the characters. Like G.I. Robot is next for episode 3. We can expect the animation to either remain consistent or continuously ramp up as the series goes on. I expect each episode will water the seeds planted for these characters from that first episode and continue to emotionally tie us to these characters. I think, although I really wish the episodes were on some X-Men 97 type shit and were 30 minutes or longer, I do feel that because of this structure, certain characters are just there to be there and will be just supplementary in other characters' episodes. But I know it's not a big deal since I know they'll get their time, and they were hyper affected with what little time they did have. I'm assuming since animation is cheaper to do, plus with only 7 episodes, they were able to get a lot of bang for their buck with the quality of each episode. Bobby Pills, the animators absolutely went off. They did such great work. The reviews from people who I believe have seen the whole season already have been more than promising. So that just affirms my expectations even more. And I expect even more so now that me staying up till 2 a.m. for the next 5 weeks, fucking up my next work day for a mere 23 minutes will be well worth it. So I gotta give episode 2 a solid 8. As for Easter eggs, the only one I can really recall is seeing the SSJ God Shaggy in there. It's all full circle here. People are suggesting that the princess is actually going to be Clayface, and I gotta say, I can 100% see that happening. Frank Grillo is a beast, but nobody just gets it thrown on them like that. Well, plus I have a very sneaking suspicion that the queen is actually the real princess. I'm not sure, but I feel like this was one of those things that they sneak in very well that will be a callback later. But now to address the actual, but not so actual controversies. So on the not so actual side, I see so many people saying Gunn just copy and pasted Guardians with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. I'll give you that Gunn does have a style that is consistent within his movies. He does favor a lot of the same tropes, but each movie slash TV show has its own unique story in it. Guardians, at least the first one, is about the team coming together to stop this alien warlord. Peacemaker is ultimately about stopping an alien invasion. The Suicide Squad is a search and destroy, and Creature Commandos, I get, are way more similar, but it's a spiritual successor to the Suicide Squad. So I get the comparisons, but there's enough variation in all these projects to be new and satiating. They're all good, so even if that were abundantly true, it's insane how Gunn managed to even make them all worth watching. I think the notion is greatly exaggerated just to spite Gunn, but I think if you have that worry for Superman, even though he said already it wasn't an ensemble film, that is one of the more valid critiques. He's only worked with ragtag teams, but can he make a good solo movie? Can he handle Superman? I trust Gunn, so I really don't doubt he can. I think he's gonna knock it out of the park, but I accept if others don't share that same confidence in his ability for Superman. And speaking of Superman, we got our first look at Superman in the DCU. Now, of course, this caused controversy, and the regular culprits went straight to work on over-exaggerating the severity of this image here, taking it in any which negative way they could conceive, trying to call hypocrisy on people who have criticized Snyder for his use of Christ and God allegory with Superman, saying that it's okay when Gunn does it, but when Zack does it, it's a problem. Zack Zack killed off Superman in the second movie, and now Gunn killed him off in the first episode of the DCU, which I get why people do this with Superman. He is a godlike figure, being so powerful, he saves people. The allegory, whether it's Jesus, God, Moses, all that stuff, the allegory makes sense. And even though I think when it's done, it's extremely on the nose, it's never a make or break issue for me, and I think for most people. I think if you put the same imagery in any other Superman incarnation, but balance it out by reminding the audience that Superman is a person just like everyone else. He has this great power, but he's just trying to help out because it's the right thing to do, and he genuinely enjoys helping people. Less people would notice or have issues with it. Essentially, I don't think Jesus imagery was people's main problem with Zack's take on Superman and his handling of characters. I also think that, again, it's insane to be extrapolating so much from knowing so little about what this image pertains to, or to be so intellectually dishonest just to try and spite a director that is in a position you wish your favorite director was in. I feel like this is in the same vein as the nightmare scene from Avengers Age of Ultron. Like, I think Cersei will show them this to scare them or as some dark potential future. It's not the same as killing Superman in Batman vs Superman, because we have no idea what this is, what it'll be, or if it'll even be anything. I suspect it won't, because if this happens in a later episode, it won't matter, because most of the people we see that are dead here, we know are well alive in projects next year. So also, I think this is Starfire, and although this is intense imagery and not the way I thought I'd see her in the DCU, it's still pretty badass to see her. In truth, this is all just a very delusional and infantile attempt to, in their minds, drum up enough buzz to make Gunn seem incompetent so that they can live out their ultimate dream timeline where they are successful, and making Gunn seem that way and like a horrible person so that he'd, in hopes, be fired by WB, and they would be on their hands and knees back to Zack to direct again and restore the Snyderverse. That's truthfully what it is. It's quite pathetic, but it is what it is. Do as you will. I'll do as I will, and I'll talk about the things I love. Overall, I know I'm super inclined to be favorable of Gunn's work. I will try to be as conservative with my ratings and as fair of the show as I can possibly be, and right now it's at a fluctuating 7.5 to 8 out of 10. If they can continue the trend of quality animation, storytelling, and emotion, I think there's nowhere but up from here. I also really fuck with the music too. I like the Eastern European vibes. I don't think it'll beat X-Men 97, but I can see it giving Invincible some work. All in all, a great year for animation and a great show so far. Let me know what you thought of it, players. Any predictions you might have, I'm all ears, but that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, leave me a thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want, subscribe. I always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope all of you guys are well, and I will see you in the next one.